to Drummers Only Radio. Drummers Only is the UK's leading drum shop with store locations in Glasgow and Leeds. Our podcasts are full of interviews, gear reviews, and much more from the unique perspective of a drum shop. The show is hosted by two pasty Scottish dudes who talk real fast. Whoa, slow down there, Braveheart. So here's Chris, the Glasgow shop manager, and Adam, the social media manager. Be sure to like, subscribe, and let's do this.
Drummers Only Radio, episode number 51. And we're here with our great friend, Michael Schack. Good evening, Michael. How are you?
Good evening, guys. So I'm episode 51 then.
Yes, correct.
Okay,
correct.
That's good.
Yeah, we've been doing this for just over 2 years, I think, now. And
great.
The video started because of lockdown, because we couldn't see people in the store and
Exactly
that kind of thing. So we decided to start doing them on Zoom, and it's been working out okay so far, apart from some techie issues this evening. But we haven't seen you in a while. How are you doing, man? How's things?
Things are good. I'm healthy. I'm positive. COVID brought some possibilities as well. It's not at all. It's actually not have it. It has not been the most negative experience at all, because I got some more time at home and I started producing a little bit more. The Drumeo Coaches started, and that's going really well. I could work a little bit on some new things, drumming wise.
Great.
I can't complain, actually.
Good. It's good to hear positivity. We had Joost Nickel on last episode, or it's just dropped today, and he was the same, very positive. So it's good to hear you guys are turning it into good things. You know?
Well, let's say it's not the most dreamt of situation, but one thing's for sure: music is not cancelled. And that's what many people forget. Okay, there's no concerts and so on. But on the other hand, if you can find yourself being creative in a crisis situation, you're good for the rest of your life. That's my opinion. And still, I don't like the musicians that are now very, very negative. And because, you started making music as a young guy or girl when you weren't even being a professional. You just did it out of passion, and I think I found a little bit of that passion back.
Amazing Good.
Yeah
I think as well the people that were not idle, the people that were creative straight away, were the people that were always going to do well, because they turn what, like you said, they turn what is a negative situation into a positive one. How did you get your start playing, man? How did it, like you just talked about that, you didn't start playing music for anything other than passion. So how did it start for you?
I was 4 years old.
Wow.
And I had parents who were like musically minded. They had a good taste for music. There was jazz at our house. There was French music like Schack at our house. And I just started moving to some beats and some rhythms that passed on the radio. My parents saw it. And they allowed me to have a pair of sticks and a living room seat to start. And then when I was 7 years old, for my, we call it Sinterklaas in Benelux, but it's actually Santa Claus kind of a thing. I received a pair of bongos.
Oh wow!
And then 1 year later, they added kind of a very dodgy looking snare drum. And with those two bongos and that snare, I was just sitting on the floor and I started compiling tom-like constructions with the old washing powder boxes. Those were like cardboard cylinders.
Yeah.
It looked like a very big version of this roll of gaffer tape. They were really long. And then I just started bashing, and I started listening to American-made music. My father was my late father was somebody who was working at a bank, and he was specialized in credits in loans for new companies. And he got a client who was starting a new a record import company in Antwerp. and they started importing original American pressed vinyl from CBS Records at that time and so on. So every week he came home with the most amazing records, and I was just playing along, and that's how it got a little bit more serious. But I never had the ambition to become a professional musician.
Oh,
I was
really?
still, no, I just went to music school for music notation courses, but no drumming courses. I mainly taught myself just by playing along to those Herbie Hancock, Michael Jackson records. Everything was mixed up. Brothers Johnson, lots of P-Funk, Parliament, Funkadelic.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are my roots. Mixture of Miles Davis to Parliament, Funkadelic to Earth, Wind and Fire to mainly funky music, but the real deal. And then when I went to university, I actually studied economics, not music.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I have a degree in economics.
Wow.
So
amazing.
I became a professional musician the year after I graduated, because at that time we still had a obligatory army service for 1 year. And during that year I was in the army, I was stationed quite close to home. During the weekend I was gigging, and that's how it started. Yeah, and I ended up playing with a band, and that band we recorded an album together. I also co-wrote some of the songs. And that album came out. It was signed by a major label suddenly, because we had a very good manager. And suddenly, after my army service, instead of working in a bank, I started doing a tour.
Wow. So
and that's how it happened. So it was a very natural thing, thanks to people actually buying that record, which immediately went into a golden record in Belgium within 3 months after the release. So I could actually make a living out of just playing with a band.
wow, what a story, man. So
Yeah.
if it wasn't for the army, we would have no Michael Schack playing stadiums, because you would have been.
Well, actually, if we wouldn't have been able to record that album during my army service and also go gigging in bars and cafes and get a name for ourselves, it would probably I would probably have ended up just, with a totally different career, still playing drums, but more as a hobby than as a professional occupation.
Please take this in every way I intend it, but you are not the kind of person that should be working in a bank, man. Like,
well, actually, I do my own banking,
but but you've got too much.
Like you guys as well, with everybody does his own business. But the thing is, and this is actually, I'm very fortunate, because due to the fact that I do have a degree in economics, immediately I could also take my own management in hand. So apart from playing with the band, I immediately also realized that I needed to do some marketing. Of course, thanks to my university studies, I also got to speak and learn 4 languages, which really helped me in the Roland thing, because I could speak Dutch, French, German, and English, and writing as well. So I also, I have a little bit of knowledge about contracts and publishing and so on, because, those were topics that really interested me when I was still a student as well. So it kind of evolved towards, this was the music path, this was my degree, and it came together and it made a combination. And this way I became like an independent, a little bit of my own independent company. So I started doing things outside of the band, which I thought were also very important to get organized and so on.
That's really fascinating to hear, man.
I use it every day. Yeah.
But like, what I mean is, you've got so much passion for music that it would have been a crime if we didn't have you. You know what I mean?
Thanks for the compliment. Let's say it's a lucky coincidence that everything came together. But it always starts by playing in front of an audience. As a musician, you can have the most crazy ideas and the most let's say the most the biggest ambitions, but it's still the audience which helps the most. If they don't like what you're doing, you're not going to end up playing in front of an audience. They have to, that's something I realize myself more and more, especially when going online. You need to, you don't only have to perform for yourself. You also have to entertain people and make something worthwhile so they can get some fun and some positive thing out of it. And when you find that good combination, that's mostly good for a long-lasting career.
Yeah, I would agree completely, because you would have no gold record without an audience, right? It's I mean,
exactly. You will even not a bronze record. It doesn't need to be a gold record.
Yeah.
There's no way that you can land inspiring playing situations without having the audience dancing on your drumming. It's impossible.
Was that something you learned before college?
No. That's something I saw happening before college, but it's not something I learned, because I was an audience myself when I was 14, 15 years old. I went to see Level 42 and Sade live in Holland, and I went to the North Sea Jazz Festival, and I saw Michael Jackson live at Werchter, and I really went out and checked out all those drummers and so on. But I saw people dancing around me, and I thought by myself, that's what I want to do as a drummer, make people dance. And I think I kind of stuck to that ambition.
Yeah, because there's a lot of musicians that play in their bedroom that don't really, they become happy with that, but to not share
that's okay.
Yeah, totally. But if you want to, like you're talking about, you were already going out and gigging as well as a hobby, so you had that ingrained from being a teenager to being a working musician. You sort of learned that.
I just loved boomy PAs. I loved watching sound checks. I became a little bit of a PA geek myself, because I so much love a loud PA, with a lot of sub and a lot of high end and just kicking your butt.
Yeah.
I'm to be honest, it also depends a little bit on your personality. I think more introvert people will see their music making in a different way than I do. I'm more extrovert, and I just love being on stage and kicking the hell out of those PA speakers.
Brilliant. How did you get started with electronics? Because that's what you've looking at your website.
That's actually part of the thing.
Right.
I immediately discovered that if you want to have the best drum sounds I saw were the sounds which were, the best drum experience I saw live when I was a youngster there was always something electronic involved.
Wow.
Like I remember one of the first Billy Cobham concerts I saw with Billy Cobham as a drummer. I was 12 years old. He was using the very first version of those syncussion drums, those pads that went pew, 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 pew.
Yeah.
And I thought it was awesome. I was more interested in how he was using those effect sounds than actually the double bass drumming, because I thought it was something new. And then when I saw a live concert by the Japanese band called Cassiopeia, and that was, I think, at the North Sea Jazz Festival, the drummer of Cassiopeia is Akira Jimbo.
Oh, wow.
And he was one of the first guys who actually integrated electronics into his acoustic Yamaha setup.
Yeah, absolutely.
He is probably one of the first international touring hybrid drummers.
Wow.
In the mid 80s, he was the guy who actually was triggering tom and kick sounds.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. And it looked like a normal acoustic drum set. So when people tell me, hey, hybrid drumming, it's kind of new, I say, well, maybe you were asleep for the last 40 years, because 35 years ago, Akira Jimbo was just doing that on the festival stages.
Wow. So do you take that and then go find Simmons or go and find Yamaha or something or whatever?
No, I immediately when I was studying, I was 18 years old. I just had my driver's license. I immediately drove to the music store and bought myself a Dr. Pat, which was the very first Boss one pad. And you had three versions. You had the percussion versions with one cowbell sound and a clap sound. Then you had an electronic version with a clap and a kick sound. And then you had another one. And I went for the one which produced the clap and the kick sound. And you could actually hit it for claps on the snare. And I was playing in a soul cover band, and I was banging on that clap for every single chorus. I wanted to play those claps, and I immediately discovered that when I did those claps, people were clapping as well. So it kind of went into my system that actually adding some electronic sounds to your acoustic drumming actually helped people move.
That's pretty amazing, man. So when was that? That was like, what, 30 years ago?
84.
Wow, that's amazing. So as far back as that?
To be very honest, I'm 55 years old.
Well, you look good for it.
Thank you. No smoking, no drinking.
There you go.
but I started with Blue Blood, with the band that got a golden record. My professional career started exactly in 91. So that's 30 years ago. Yeah.
It's pretty amazing to see, because then you'll have basically been playing drums almost through the evolution of electronics.
Yes, but when I started, you already had the Bill Bruford.
Yeah, absolutely. But like the way that the electronics are used, I'm going to air quote commercially, or for the everyman drummer. You've seen that evolution go from.
Well, the first time I went to Frankfurt Musikmesse, which was in the late 80s, I think, Josep was playing for Roland. Josep, a Canadian fusion band, and the drummer was actually using that first big electronic drum set from Roland with BCM 30, whatever it was, with those hexagonic pads.
Yeah, I know the one you mean.
And he was just doing that with, of course, at that time, acoustic cymbals, because most of the electronic drummers at that time were using pads, but the cymbals were still acoustic. And I was also a big fan of the band Cameo.
Oh, yeah.
You remember that song, Word Up?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the very first album Cameo put out was already with a Cymbals drum set. So the drummer was playing a Cymbals drum set with acoustic cymbals. And that was actually their album, their studio recording. So many people were already doing hybrid and electronics before I actually totally dug into it.
Yeah, but like just fascinating to see the tech develop. So how do you get from? The other thing is that what I was going to say is you obviously, when watching you play, regardless of the situation, you also love the music too. So
absolutely
the integration for you must have been really easy.
No, it was more like, like I told you, I was playing along to Herbie Hancock albums and Michael Jackson albums and so on, but it didn't take me a long time before I got my first drum computer. I never owned a metronome.
Right.
I immediately had a drum computer, which was a very basic Roland Boss kind of small rhythm machine that couldn't do anything, but it had two things I really liked. First of all, of course, clap sounds. And second, every drum computer at that time had one kind of incorporated patch with a bass sound and a very, very basic sequencer. Even when it was only 4/4 1 bar, I was actually programming some bass loop and I was playing on top instead of using a metronome. So I had, for instance, a cowbell on the 1 and the 3 and a clap on the 2 and the 4, and then some kind of bass thing going on. And immediately, if you do more, it went into error or empty memory or full memory or whatever. But I was just playing a lot on top of that. And then, of course, at the same time, hip hop came through with a lot of those Lindrum sounds, and Prince came with his sound, using drum computers. And that was perfect to play along to because those tempos were stable. When you play along to a Herbie Hancock album for years and years, you immediately actually feel that the tempo is changing from the start till the end. you're actually starting at 92 BPM and you're ending after 7 minutes because the songs on those albums were so long.
Yeah.
You ended at 115 or something.
Yeah.
Because they were also smoking at the same time when they recorded. But anyway, with the drum computer, the tempo was stable. And that's probably how I got to be a more stable tempo keeper, because it's something you can actually teach your body to feel tempo stability. I'm really convinced that tempo stability comes from playing along to stable recordings.
Yeah, I agree. I used to teach kids to practice along to pop music that was gridded and all that, because it was less boring than a metronome. It gave it context, and it doesn't move, so you're going to develop time.
One of my favorite albums I played along to, and that's I still think it's one of the best albums ever made in the UK, is Mark King's solo album.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I was a big fan of Level 42.
Yeah.
Because he was a drummer playing bass. That's who he is.
Yeah.
Mark King is a very good drummer. He became a bass player, and he has this percussive kind of thing. And I totally connected to it. And I played along to his solo album for so many years. It's just a couple of those albums, when I think back at to when I was starting, have been so influential. But it's never the albums that drummers usually quote. I never listened to Rush. I was kind of a Dave Weckl fan, but it was not really. I was more like an Akira Jimbo kind of listener than a Dave. Of course, Chick Corea and everything. I also have those albums myself, but it was never those kind of things that actually triggered me or turned me on.
Yeah, I get
it. It was mostly Marcus Miller playing bass with Al Foster on a funky Miles Davis kind of thing, which many drummers thought was boring, but it was so good to play along to.
Yeah.
So that's how that when I translated that into my own music a little bit later, that's the influence.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did you get started with Roland then?
Well, not long after my first year as a professional drummer with Blue Blood, I got a phone call from Jeroen Ravensloot, who was the Roland marketing guy for Belgium and Holland.
Okay.
So for Benelux, and that was in I think it was just after summer in '92, and he told me, "Hey, this is Jeroen from Roland. We met before. He was also a musician gigging somewhere, and." We're going to release with Roland, we're going to release a compact drum set. And we're looking for a new demonstrator. Can you speak French? That was his second question. And I said, I speak Dutch and French. Yeah, good, because we kind of want to replace our two demonstrators, one for the Flemish and Dutch speaking part and one for the French part. We want a young drummer who can speak both languages, so we can have the same person going on the road. And I went to Roland. I picked up that drum set. It was a pre-production model. I experimented with it at home for 2 weeks, and I immediately thought, this is probably what I want to go for. So, and then I had to do a test demo in front of a small corporate audience, and that's how it got started. That's how it started. And after that test demo, they sent me out to dealers around Benelux, so Holland and Belgium. But I also immediately started incorporating samplers. So I had my TD7, the good old TD7. Wow. And it was the first drum set that also had cymbal pads. Okay. It was tom pads, but you could play cymbal sounds on them. So it was the first compact drum set without acoustic cymbals. That's what the TD7 is all about. And then I started adding, I bought from Roland a big S750, which actually weighs more than that drum set. And I put it in a rack, and and it was with the old disk drives. And then I had a sequencer triggering those samples, and I had some kind of pad system where it was a crazy setup, but I immediately started using firing samples live when I was performing. And then a little bit later, Roland came out with the SP202 DJ sampler. You remember that one?
I don't actually know.
And Jeroen told me, you want to use this in your drum setup? This is actually made for DJs. And I said, yeah, of course, because I can trigger samples on it. And it was very dodgy. It was very basic, but it worked. It was so fast. And then I started incorporating, I started incorporating live sampling into my drumming. Mm-hmm. I made a little bit of a name for myself doing that. I learned how to perform solo, but I was, of course, triggering vocals and bass loops and so on. And it became kind of my own one-man band kind of thing. And it never stopped since. And that was still for Benelux only. And it took until 2001 before I really went international, because that was the first time I could demonstrate for the Japanese at the Frankfurt Music Messe. And after they saw my demo over there, they booked me for this as sort of a test. After they saw my demo over there, they booked me a ticket to Japan, and that's how it started internationally. Yeah. And so I was very fortunate that everything happened at the right time, so I could first make a little bit of a name for myself in Benelux only. And then that triggered some Japanese guys saying, okay, we'll have him, we'll try him at Frankfurt. And at Frankfurt, of course, the all international team from US and from UK, the Roland people from UK, and they started booking me, and that's how I started traveling for Roland.
Was it easy for you to work the gear?
Actually, after, I learned so much from doing those demos with the TD7, also the bugs that were in there, and so on, so on, so on. So it became, kind of my second nature. If I heard something was not working, it was kind of, okay, let's do this systematically. Is the MIDI cable in? Okay, the MIDI cable is in. Is a PA on? Is there something wrong with the phones jack? Is, this kind of thing. So it's kind of a system I still use. Like step one, check the cable. Step two, electricity. No, step one, electricity. Okay. Step two, cables. Step three, is there a pad broken? Okay, if you think this pad is broken, change the other pad. Okay, is it still broken? Okay, then it's the pad cable. So it becomes kind of like an airline pilot doing a checklist.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. Because it must have been pretty nerve-wracking to just all of a sudden be playing in front of the guys that make this stuff.
Actually, that crazy morning in Frankfurt, I asked, because one of the main floor programmers, for the performances of all musicians, was telling me, Michael-san, as a Japanese, Michael-san, tomorrow your first demo, please do good. I'm like, yeah, I know, I'm fucking nervous. But of course, I asked him, please don't come to the first demo, because maybe I'm a little bit nervous and so on. No worry. You first demo at 9:15 morning, we come at 10. Of course, at 9:15 in the morning, the full-blown Japanese team was there with all the video cameras. So I was so nervous, I was pissing my pants. But it went well. And sometimes they say you perform better than you think under pressure. Well, that was probably the moment.
Yeah, amazing. Well, look at the career it's helped you build, man. I probably know the answer to this question, but how do you decide what Roland gear to take out live? Like your setup is it could be as minimal as you need it to be, or as full on. So
it depends. It depends on the music.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I would imagine it's dependent on the
as you see, this is my. It became a little bit famous lately because this is my Drumeo Coaches setup.
Right.
And when we started with Drumeo Coaches, of course, I'm well known as a V-drums player. But the thing is, when you start teaching online, it's important to reach as big of an audience as possible. And of course, I'm a well-known electronic drummer, but I just want to prove I'm a drummer. It doesn't matter if you play electronic or acoustic. We're all drummers.
Yeah.
And in drumming world, there's a lot of conservatism still, because people think that when you only practice on an electronic drum set, you will never be a good drummer. This is complete bullshit. That's bollocks. Because I played so many gigs on electronic drums, and it made me a better acoustic drummer.
Right.
I physically can witness that I became a better drummer also recording in the studio with an acoustic set.
Right.
And of course, I always combine it. As you can see, there's the SPD-SX out there.
Yeah.
There's some triggers on there. I'm using the Evans set because, you know, it's my sound.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go to an electronic setup, I actually choose in function of what artist I'm playing with, or if I'm playing my own solo DJ drummer set. Because then I start standing up. So I kind of rebuilt the TD50 and now the TD50X into a stand-up version for the DJ drummer setup and solo gigs, and for the things I do with an artist here in Belgium, Reggie Live. For Netsky, I was sitting down, and also for drum clinics, I will be sitting down. For the streams, for instance, here, I'm also sitting down.
Yeah.
Because I want to play some double kicks and so on, which is not possible when you stand up. Well, it might be possible, but only once, and then I fall off the stage. So it really depends on the music.
Right. You never use a rack tom when you play acoustic drums, is that right?
I stopped using it. I have clips online from recently that still have the rack tom.
Okay.
But something happened. The microphone, there was some kind of problem with the microphone during a stream. And I just, you know what? Let's get rid of the rack tom. And now I love this setup so much because it actually makes me move differently.
Yeah.
The tom sounds became a little bit different. And I'm mainly now using the hi-hat also as my smaller rack tom in fills and so on.
Oh, cool. Okay.
I actually have a clip online which is becoming a little bit popular, and it says hi-hat as a tom.
Right.
You know, instead of doing this, you know, the half circle kind of thing, I'm actually going like this, like an iron.
Yeah. So that it teaches you to be more creative then.
Yeah. And it also sounds a little bit different because that typical gung, gung, gung is gone. So you start playing some fills differently. Like, for instance, using playing a fill which actually starts on a hi-hat, or for instance on the smaller floor tom, the first one, and then still ending on the big one. So you have to do kind of a different mayonnaise kind of thing. And also you start using your kick drum a little bit differently in fills.
Oh, okay.
Because, you don't have the rack tom. So instead of going out front, you know, from the snare to the front, I go from the snare to the bass drum to buy myself some time to move to my floor tom, for instance.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
instead of taka tuku tuku boom boom, you go taka boom boom tuku tuku.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
See, that can actually it's taka boom boom tuku tuku. So it kind of changes. Yeah, you find different solutions.
That's cool, man. That's cool. Do you do would you ever do that just on a gig? Just turn up with different drum set, you know?
Absolutely.
Great.
Yeah, I think I'm now booked for instance, the first booking for a drum festival came in recently. Tama booked me for a drum festival in Spain.
Tam Tam?
No, I already did Tam Tam for Roland.
I was watching
this is
that today.
Alteza.
Okay.
Alteza Drum Festival, not so far from Madrid. And I'm actually going to use this setup in the clinic.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Also to let the people, you know, give them the experience that there's no cliches.
Yeah.
You know,
sure.
you can also, when you see some of those younger hybrid drummers, lots of them have just a snare, one floor, two cymbals, and an SPD-SX in front of them instead of the rack toms.
Yeah.
So, and I kind of want to shock people sometimes, you know, especially the more conservative kind of drummers that think that the drum set can only look like a drum set because it looks like two rack toms and a floor.
Yeah.
It's freedom. You can do whatever you want.
For the longest time, Adam that works here used to play that way. So no rack tom and an SPDSX in front of him. That was what he played for years.
Absolutely. And you know, you become one with your setup because you actually start playing also that particular setup in a different way than when you're sitting behind the 2 up, 1 down setup.
And totally. You have to think differently, you know. You absolutely do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was watching some of your latest music that you've put out today. I watched Ha, and then I can't say that word. There's a tune, and it begins with F, Fokine or something. One of the tunes that you've written. There's a video for it.
Fraku.
Aye, I don't know what that word. I couldn't say that word. But the music's really hip. It's really cool. So how do you write? How does that process for you start?
Well, actually, last Thursday, I released a new single with a young singer. Mm-hmm. So this is another thing that happened, but that happened already before COVID. At some point, after doing so many drum clinics and touring so much with Netsky also, of course, you get to know some people from the electronic music scene as well. Mm-hmm. Not only live performers, but also DJs and so on. And lots of that music inspires me. I'm, for instance, a very big fan of sounds, how producers make it sound. And because I've always written my own compositions for the drum clinics, but also always mashing up things that nobody's doing, like for instance a Nirvana guitar with a Whitney Houston vocal and a drop by deadmau5, for instance. I started just having ideas for myself, and then somebody just told me, why don't you start your own record label and put out your own music, but not as a Michael Schack the drummer, but as Michael Schack the DJ drummer,
is that
as a producer. Fat Cake, And Fraku was the first track, and I went to Holland to do some extra mixing and mastering, and I learned a lot from those guys, because those guys also work for Tiesto, and they work for many other international DJs who spend a lot of time on the airplanes instead of actually producing their own music. So I also became a little bit friends with some of the ghost writers who actually produce tracks for DJs without having their names on it, but these artist DJs buy those tracks, and so they can put their name on it. So that's a whole business model that actually is centralized, not only in it's actually a lot of Holland business going on there. Lots of things are happening in the Netherlands, which is very close. For me, driving to the border to the Netherlands is 30 minutes drive. So this is how Fraku happened, and then I had a second idea, and maybe I should make a single with John Burko.
Right.
The John Burko, the chair of the British Parliament.
Yeah, totally. That video's amazing.
I started looking for samples on the internet, and I have a very good friend here in Antwerp he was a Brit. His name is a very well-known stand-up comedian, and he kind of impersonates John Burko, and we put his voice and the Burko samples. I made a dance track out of it, and it totally went viral at the news agencies in November 2019. So that was the second Fat Cake release, and then I was saying, okay, I need to continue doing this. Then I put another single out last year in June. So sometimes it takes a while, but now recently I signed my first young artist on the label, and the single has just came out. It's called Changing Reality. It's totally produced with the acoustic drums, but lots of samples. We produced it together. I produced it together with the singer. He's an amazing young talent. He's an incredible good singer, and I don't know how it's going to evolve, but on Spotify the streams are okay. So I think this is something that will last for a very long time.
Amazing. It's what struck me through a lot of it, watching it and listening to it, the production quality is sensational. You know,
Thank you.
The quality of
Well,
what you've put out is amazing. You know,
actually, in the beginning, I had a little bit of help.
Yeah, we all
and
do.
I learned a lot of things, and then every single I did more and more. I found more and more my own way, and now with the latest single, which came out last week, it's totally what we were gonna go for. And sometimes you meet someone with very young ears, and you just hear the same things in your head. I have a lot more experience mixing things because also through doing drum sounds for Roland and so on, I really found myself a system in Ableton where I'm totally working with specific kind of plugins for the kick and the snare and so on and so on, and everything comes together, and there you go.
Amazing. Yeah.
But it's been a long process.
Okay.
It's not something you can learn just from watching YouTube tutorials. No, because then you end up sounding like those YouTube tutorials.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of different things that's making it more and more personal.
Do you still do you do things like when you make a track, you try it on a variety of different speakers to hear how it sounds in the car versus the phone versus
yes. Especially at the mastering stage.
Yeah.
Because everything I do everything myself. Okay. I don't have an external mastering engineer anymore. I try to come up with a mastering chain that really works. It sometimes changes from production to production. I even do mastering on the backing tracks, which I use for my drum clinic stuff.
Wow.
It's a totally different sound I need. So, and I will be playing on top. So the mastering needs to be a little bit different. But I'm always checking out things on my studio monitors, of course.
Yeah.
Also on headphones, but always in the car. The car is the most important. You know, there's two sets of speakers that people are listening music from. Only two.
Really?
It's their smartphone and the car.
Yeah, it's crazy, huh?
Headphones, there's a lot of variety. Some people use these headphones, but most people also use their Bluetooth speakers. So I actually bought the specific 2 brands of Bluetooth speakers also to check those mixes on there.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy. And the other thing that struck me recently when I was watching and doing a bit of research for this is the amount of work that must go into a DJ set that you do is phenomenal. Like, I don't think people quite understand that. Time. Yeah, and even just the performance element of it, where you have to know that music inside out. Like, there is no room for error at all. That's
actually, I'm jamming.
Really?
Yeah, but the thing is, if you have good content, you can start jamming. So I have a lot of those mashups ready to be triggered when I put on a live show. And of course, there's a little bit of a system.
Yeah.
So I know for a live show, let's start with an intro that totally captures everyone's attention. And then for the first 5 minutes, people will be like this. First of all, there's 50% of the audience that doesn't believe that it's live. So they're like this. Huh? And the other 50% is like... They're wondering, I don't know the version of this tune. I don't know it. So they hear a vocal, but there's a totally different bass line. But after 5 minutes, people start really digging into it. And then they actually start understanding that I'm doing everything live, because sometimes I just stop the music, put the filter on and say, "You're not dancing, are you?" Baff, and I go back to the drop. That's something a DJ cannot do, because I have everything triggerable. But mostly the system is very simple. I have a lot of mashups ready to be triggered. Also, I can put some, I have a full column of vocals that I can trigger on top of those if I need them. For instance, if the audience is not really active, put on a vocal on there, they start singing along, and they're your best friends for the rest of the gig. But also there's a system. I know, like, okay, the first 10, 15 minutes, let's go 130 BPM-ish. Then maybe, depending on the audience, I will bring in some drum and bass a little bit earlier when the audience is a little bit longer. It also depends on the country. For instance, when you go into East Europe, drum and bass should be there within the first 10 minutes. Right. Because drum and bass is still very hip and big over there. Okay. But when you do this, for instance, in the States, no drum and bass within minute 1 and 45 because people will leave.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, they need more hip hop and more reggaeton kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there's another thing I learned, which is really important. If you can make the female audience dance, the guys will stick around. That's very, very important. So it's always, if you are on a stage position and you see women having a lot of fun, your gig will be okay. If the women are not reacting, they will ask the guy to leave.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's like a trade secret, man.
It's very important. And the same, I actually also learned this at drum clinics.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay.
I'm not kidding. Because the girlfriend of the drummer who's at the drum clinic doesn't really want to be there.
No.
She has nothing with drums. It's a bunch of noise and testosterone. Of course, lately they have, lucky us, they have been more incredibly female performance. So for the drumming world finally opened up to multi-gender performances without having separate festivals or competitions, Hit Like a Girl and things. Everything is really coming together now. But the thing is, if you can entertain the girlfriend sitting next to the drummer, they will stick till the end of the show. That's actually, if you can make them laugh, they will say, "Hey, boyfriend, hey, maybe you should get that new cymbal." And then the boyfriend says, "Yeah, I can buy a new cymbal." So that's actually a game changer when I started really also looking at the people that are not supposed to be there.
That's really smart.
It's something that happened through experience, because in the beginning, of course, you're just playing for the drummers. So as many fills and as many things as possible. But when you make, the parents and the younger sister and the girlfriend, when you make them clap their hands, then the drummers say, "Hey, it's good that I brought you here, didn't I? So good marks for me."
Amazing. This is a really, really boring question, but do you, when you set up your SPDSX for things like your show, do you have a system there where like pad 1 is always the same thing, pad 2 is always the same thing, pad 3 is always the same thing? It's such a boring question. I'm sorry.
2 pads are key.
Okay.
The start and the end.
Right. Okay. That's it.
Everything in between depends on the song or on the performance.
Okay.
But I know my lower right-hand pad, so
9,
on the first row, is the start.
Right.
And it's not the click. It's immediately an intro or a soundscape. So it immediately starts sounding through a PA.
Mm-hmm.
And to stop everything, it's pad number 9, upper right.
Mm-hmm.
And if my performance of a particular song has more kids involved, I will still have sort of a transition sound on pad number 9 to be able to actually hit the foot switch and go to the next kit.
Yeah, so that gives it time to load or anything else. Yeah.
But it's a very simple system. It always works. And for instance, the main drop will be on the middle pad, second row.
Right, okay. I think it has to be simple, right? Because if it's too complicated, you'll end up making a mistake or something.
It's all about motoric memory.
Right, okay.
Because my SPDSX is kind of out there, it's far away.
Yeah, it's
so people can, it's something I learned through demonstrations. I want people to see that I'm doing it live. Mm-hmm. Many people have their SPDSX kind of,
tucked away
somewhere in disguise, tucked away. So you cannot really see what they are doing. Mm-hmm. But when you make it really obvious, people actually start digging. Okay. Oh, he's going to the SPDSX. Yeah. Something is going to happen. Yeah. And that's also what the DJ does. There's tension build. Yeah. And then the drop comes. Yeah. It gets really funky and people start moving. So same system on the SPDSX. Yeah,
fair enough. I thought it would be, but I felt like the nerd in me had to ask. So you have been known in the last few years for creating sounds for Roland, and you've been part of the design team for a few of the newer products that have come about.
Actually, it's been quite a while. The very first product I actually collaborated on, but very actively, was the very first version of the TD20.
Oh wow! Okay.
So it was Yeah. So I started doing this in 2003.
Right. Wow. So what's that process like for you then?
It's a privilege.
Oh, of
but
course.
it's also
Yeah, for
hard
sure.
work.
Yeah, I'll bet. Yeah.
I can tell you a very specific example is what we put out lately, the TD27 and the TD50X.
Yeah.
The TD27 was developed before COVID.
Right.
Myself, Cas Rodriguez, and Craig Blundell, we actually premiered the TD27 at the last live NAMM show in January 2020.
Okay. Wow.
So that project TD27, I was involved in a little bit of the new sound design, but also the beta testing and so on. But that project was still going on while we were all traveling. So I was going to Japan twice a year to check on things and so on. And then when I came back to my studio, the Japanese asked me, can you maybe produce these specific process sounds? And then we can put them inside the TD27. And then we can, from those sounds, we will then design the kits,
Yeah.
Because you have three different stages in developing a V-drum set. You have the engineering part,
Okay.
which is hardware and software. Then you have the sound part, which is mainly software. So it's digital audio and layering and so on. But then after hardware and sound come together and the thing starts working, you still have to make content, which is kit design.
Right.
So those three things not happen at the same time. It's like you have to wait for one to be working before you can start the other one.
Okay.
So it's an evolving process. Now with TD50X, that project already started before COVID happened, but suddenly COVID happened. And I was, for instance, booked to go to Japan twice to really work on the TD50X. And of course, in Japan also, everything closed.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky that I have my studio. So immediately my studio became one of the main sound design and test facilities.
Wow.
Because in Japan, also, everybody had to work from home.
That's amazing.
But they don't have their own studio. I'm lucky that I have my own studio here because of the video thing and everything. So the TD50X became a 2-year project, but a very intense one because we all had to work from a distance.
Wow.
And I can tell you, so the TD50X appeared in March this year, but the whole COVID year from March 2020 till March 21, TD50X was kind of an intense project.
Yeah, it sounds
very intense.
It sounds like that would be a lot of pressure as well to get it done.
Well, and the thing is, the advantage is we were building it on top of the old TD50, so it was more like a second version than starting something from scratch.
Yeah.
But it was quite intense working this way. Yeah.
Do you get to look outside of like music for sounds? Like, for example, can you shut your door and record it and start to work off that as a sound when you're designing it?
Yeah.
So you can look at whatever you want to try and create the sound.
I have total liberty.
That's amazing. Yeah. That must be pretty cool for a guy like you who's really creative.
Well, of course, they request me for some specific things because they know I'm a hybrid drummer and they know I'm into electronic music. So they will ask me, for instance, more for these kind of things. And they will ask Craig Blundell, for instance, for the sampling session at Metropolis Studios in London to record cymbals sounds. Yeah, because Craig is mainly a type of drummer who uses a lot of cymbals in his acoustic setup. Yeah. So they will ask him. So we were a whole team, but everybody has a specific role, and my role is more involved into the process sounds, making new versions of old classic TR-909, totally fucking them up, for instance, into something completely different with an acoustic layer in there, so it becomes a more process sound. For instance, through my experience with Netsky, I know why a drum and bass drum sound needs to be this way to work live. A very specific example in drum and bass, the kick is never as subby as the bass. Right. The kick actually is on top of the frequency spectrum of the bass. In pop music, it's mostly the kick, which has a low punch, and the bass, which is more like low mid, just above the kick. So it depends on the type of music. And with dubstep, everything got crazy. People think dubstep is dead, but it's not. It really isn't. It's so important to have these kind of music styles evolving, because it brought us so many new kick sounds and so many new snare vibes and so on, which now need to be translated into the free drums.
Yeah, for sure. It must be funny with things with music trends change. Do you have to change the way you think about producing the sound?
No, you have to listen to a lot of things on Spotify.
And just find the sound from that.
And just listen to new things that are coming out. I have so many playlists connected to smaller independent labels. I cannot say I would never be a good drum sound producer or designer if I would only listen to the things that you hear on the radio.
Yeah, for sure. That's smart.
The radio is already history, because once it's played on the radio, it's been made 6 months before.
Yeah, correct.
So you would walk behind the bandwagon instead of actually anticipating on what the people want tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's a very difficult exercise. And that's what I love. What I love about doing those DJ drummer things I do myself, as a DJ drummer on the live stage, I can actually feel which feed drum sounds that I personally, as an artist, program in the module, which work with the audience and which don't work with the audience. And it's never the sounds that work on the album that automatically will work through a PA system.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it needs to be something more.
Yeah. Absolutely. I also thought you did a really cool video recently on how to create an electronic clap sound with cymbals, which was super hip.
With broken cymbals.
Yeah, totally. I kind of have to ask this because we're a drum store, but if you were to give someone advice on like picking up electronics on a budget, what kind of things would you encourage people to pick up?
Very simple. Don't throw away your old cymbals. Don't throw away your old drum heads unless they're cracked. Just buy a very second-hand drum shell somewhere. Put an old head in there. Lots of gaffer tape. Buy a Roland trigger and a TM2 module and get started.
Just something as simple as that, clap sound and a kick sound.
And the TM2 price has come down. It's a very simple thing to do. And with the TM2, for instance, you will have your first small digital workstation to actually put some extra effect on your acoustic kick sound or whatever. Another thing people can do is just look for a very old second-hand TD3 or TD9 or TD6 drum set on eBay, on any second-hand, or maybe online on Facebook, whatever. There's lots of people selling stuff, which is a drum set which used to be popular in the early 2000s, and now maybe for £100 you have a full drum set, and then just use that module and use some of those pads and just incorporate it into your setup. And for £150, you might have the most hip hybrid drum setup you've ever had.
Awesome. What's your favorite bit of Roland gear, like that hybrid gear? Do you have a favorite?
I have a favorite, TM6 Pro.
Yeah, it's amazing, eh?
Yeah,
it's really
for the hybrid stuff.
Yeah.
TM6 Pro. Yeah, it's also a module I was very, very much involved in. So everything that's in there is also something I like.
It's a really powerful piece of kit.
It's powerful. It's not the cheapest, but it's the fastest.
Yeah,
and that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And on top of this, it has so many good sounds from the early V-Drums days that are still very popular. It's the most condensed collection of the best working sounds every live player needs to have. And everything is in the box. And on top of this, you can still import samples and layer things yourself. Yeah. And it also, the interface teaches you a lot about sound layering, how it works.
Right.
It's actually quite plug and play, but at the same time, it's kind of inviting because it's not too complicated, but it's still very powerful.
Yeah, it feels to me like they took some of the features that drummers use with the SPD-SX and the TM2 and kind of put it in the one house, you know. I love the idea.
And the V-drums.
Yeah. I love the idea that you can just name something click and the module knows that it's a click and it knows where to assign it. That's so smart, man. It's so good.
Exactly. And one of the other important things is that it's a small box. It's not big.
No.
I have it right there. And it still has individual outs.
Yeah.
So if you want to start experimenting with putting a kick sound on a separate track or in a separate PA speaker, you can actually do so.
Yeah.
So at the same time, it brings you kind of a sound conscious thing if you really are eager to read the manual, because many people don't.
I think that's Roland's fault because they make it so easy to use, man. Their gear is so simple to use.
If you look at the Facebook groups, there's still a lot of people that don't get it.
Yeah.
And they certainly don't bother to open a manual.
No, not at all.
No.
Not at all. Well, what is next for Michael Schack?
Next is, well, we already started the production on the next single, although the new single just came out last week. I'm going to start preparing to get those drum festivals back in shape because, I'm eager to go out and play some drum festivals pretty soon. There's a lot of things we need to show. I'm really enjoying the Drumeo thing, which has exploded. Every Wednesday evening, I'm streaming from my studio.
What do you teach there?
Well, it's the Drumeo Coaches program. So instead of just teaching drum lessons, it became much more interactive with people also asking questions. There's Drumeo really went out of their league to make a very interactive interface.
Yeah.
You subscribe to that interface, which is called Drumeo Edge. Then you go to the coaches program, and we are 10. You have Jared Falk, the founder, CEO of Drumeo, but we're 10 international drummers, and every day there's a stream. So there's myself, there's Eric Improta, there's Todd Zuckerman, there's Dorothea Taylor, there's Domino Sant'Antonio, the amazing, successful female drummer on TikTok. So it's really worthwhile. Everybody has his own style or her own style. And it's been a big success. And then gigs are starting again.
Good.
That's an incredible experience, being back on the live stage.
Yeah, it's been pretty cool.
And I'm fully vaccinated. So
amazing.
I hope to be, I hope to be traveling more again soon, because I really miss traveling a lot.
Yeah, I bet. We would love to have you back, man. We've only ever had you over the once.
I would love to
come back, you know.
That was an amazing experience last time I was there.
It was pretty eye-opening for just about every single person in the room. I think the only people that knew what to expect were the Roland guys, you know, because they've obviously seen you do it, but everyone else was like pretty knocked out by some of that stuff, man. It was pretty amazing. Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
So I'm really looking forward to just not pick up the pieces, but just continue and just wait for everybody to be healthy and active again. I think it's gonna take some more time than many people expect. I don't think we're gonna go into a normal live gigging and live musicians traveling situation before next spring.
Nah, I think
it doesn't look like it.
I think you're right. I think it's going to take it way longer. They can have the football, but fuck the musicians. They don't matter. But
even if you look at the weird Olympic Games which have just started, it's for those athletes as well, not having an audience, that's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame.
Yeah, it's a shame. Yeah, absolutely. So let's solve this problem all together and then start partying all together.
So where can people find you if they want to find you? There's michaelschack.com. You do Instagram?
michaelschack.com. There's my Facebook artist page, which is drummer Michael Schack. There's Instagram, of course. That's just at Michael Schack. And there's also TikTok.
Brilliant.
But that's not really active, but it's... the main thing is Instagram and Facebook. And if people tell you that Facebook is dead, well, it's very much alive. I can tell you.
You heard it.
There's so much good drumming stuff on there now. There's a bunch of crazy drumming groups which are boring and very political, but there's so much other good stuff out there. There's lots of people sharing stuff. There's for instance, to give you an example, Drumeo has 1.5 million Facebook subscribers.
Wow.
And so on, and of course there's YouTube. Man, it's if COVID is really teaching us one thing, it's that the internet is not crashing.
No, it's not.
It's
we
getting even bigger.
Yeah, we got to speak to Jared. We did an episode with Jared, and he's a pretty amazing guy. Yeah, he's
Yeah, but not all you guys have been active on the internet as well. You took it to you took it to your advantage, and those are the people that are, those are the venues like yourselves where the party is going to start first, because everybody's eager to get out and see something in 3 dimensions again.
Yeah.
But at least you stayed active, just showing 2 dimensions.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
that's a good thing.
For sure. Well, mate, thank you so much for coming on, man. It's been a real pleasure to see you and talk to you again. And we'll be sure to link your new single in the show notes so that people can check it out. And any other content we can get. If you want us to add anything specific, just let us know and we'll get it shared.
Let's stay in touch for sure, because the direct flights between Amsterdam and Scotland are still very much active.
Brilliant. Yeah, we will, man. We will. Brilliant. You take care, though.
Thank you, guys. And good luck with episode number 52 then.
Thanks, Michael. Take care, my man.
Okay. See you soon.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Drummers Only Radio.
You can find us online at www.drummersonly.co.uk.
Drop us a line. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Drummers Only UK.
Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. We're on Apple, Spotify and YouTube.
Any questions? info@drummersonly.co.uk is the email, or if you need leads, it's leads@drummersonly.co.uk.
Thanks again for listening,
and we'll see you next time.